Hey guys, Brad here, and I have Dmuino, who is a prospective 1538 player, and let's get the game going. Alright, so their response to d4 is e6, so we might get a Nimzo Indian type position, or we can get a Queen's Gambit declined. So we'll get a Nimzo Indian if they go here, and we'll get maybe a Queen's Gambit declined if they play there. So typically my response to the Queen's Gambit declined is to go for the exchange variation, and once they take back with the pawn, I pin with the knight. I pin the knight with my bishop on g5, and then I will develop my queen to c2. That's assuming, of course, that when I take the pawn that they don't recapture with their knight. But instead, I'm going to play bishop g5, and if I'm not mistaken, this type of opening the Queen's Gambit decline was featured very heavily in the World Championship between Alekhine and Capablanca back in 27. I may be mistaken, and if anyone wants to fact check me on that, that would be great. But I think that might be correct. So black's just developing quite normally, and so is white, just trying to get their pieces out in an organized manner, and then we can start either attacking or maneuvering. One possible idea is that white may be, or black may be waiting to capture my c-pawn until I move my bishop to either e2 or d3 square, and only then would they capture, thereby, if I'm on either of these squares, forcing me to move once more, or waste the tempo effectively. Now, one of the things which, at my rating level, I don't think I fully appreciate would be, say, the difference between going bishop e2 versus bishop e3. Of course, I can recognize that bishop d3 does keep an eye on the h7 square, but beyond that, I'm not quite certain I see much of a difference. I do know that in some lines, white will bring the rook over to c1 and pull the bishop back to b1, so that's, of course, one possibility. I think here there's this idea for black, and I think it might be called Capablanca's freeing maneuver, where they play knight d6, knight d5, and that's so that white recaptures, and it kind of frees up black's position, because as you can see now, black is just slightly cramped. And typically when you have a cramped position, you want to exchange a few pieces to relieve that space disadvantage. So what else is going on in the position? If I capture with the knight, can they do this pawn push, and is that even a good idea? I don't think that could be recommended, as that pawn might be a bit loose and can come under attack. One idea, a tactic that white has here, if black doesn't move this knight, is to capture with the bishop on e6, and then once pawn captures, capture with the knight, thereby forking the queen and the rook. That would concede black the bishop pair though, and it would be an open position. So there's very likely compensation to be had from that. It seems quite interesting. And if I'm to play that way, I probably will need to play very actively. But let's give it a try. All right. Let's recapture. And now I think my top priority would be to try and get rid of black's bishop pair. I think if black can maintain the bishop pair, I might be in a bit of trouble. So my most immediate idea is to play queen f3, thereby hitting at the rook. And then if the rook were to slide over to b8, perhaps I can play bishop f4. And that would then get the bishop pair back, as black would need to respond with bishop d6 if they don't want to lose more material. Let's just make sure that it's tactically sound. I don't see anything egregiously wrong with it, so let's give it a go. I think although black went down some material in the exchanges that it ensued, I think they have pretty good piece coordination, and I think they definitely have some compensation, undoubtedly. So again, in my pursuit to get the bishop pair, I'm thinking about knight e5, and if they play knight e5 in response, I can then play queen captures f8, check, and then once the rook captures, I recapture their knight with my rook, and then let's say something to the effect of bishop b7, I can probably just retreat, but that doesn't get me the bishop pair still. But I think that's an okay variation to go with. Note that if I play knight e5 and they just play bishop e7, that's going to lose material outright because I can recapture. Nope, not going to lose material, but because the knight does defend here. So it won't lose material. Okay. So let's go in for this variation. The only reason that I'm going in for this is because the king is here and I would be hitting with check on d7. Again, I think my opponent is playing quite well. Their pieces are active, they have the bishop pair, and I too am trying to play actively in response to this. If I could withdraw, exactly. My thought was if I could encourage this bishop, or encourage the queen away from the back rank, I might be able to get at this piece. But that doesn't look like it's the case here. So now I'm thinking to recapture with check. And this knight is pinned, which is nice for me, and I'm just making sure I'm not falling prey to any tactical ideas. There is perhaps bishop here. So for that reason, let's go queen f4. So I think if I could withstand any crazy threats, black might throw at me, my position is okay, and just a little bit hesitant to say it's all done yet, because still the position is quite complex and black has a lot of play. I don't think that move worries me too much, because after bishop captures, queen captures, pawn captures, or bishop captures, knight captures, queen, and then bishop captures. So I think that's an okay trade for me. They might go pawn takes, but that does feel slightly dangerous. And I certainly need to be aware of if the queen were ever able to get here. I still have some back rank issues as well. Yeah, and they're going for that. Which doesn't completely surprise me. And I need to play a little bit quicker. And I don't want to just invite the rook over. So let's try and force a queen trade, and if queen goes to g7, I'll go queen g3. Yeah. And now I think I can force the queen exchange because I'm hitting at the bishop as well. Okay, so white has a few loose pieces, and I just need to make sure I create a little bit of space for myself, for my king specifically, so I don't get checkmated or back ranked. And I think everything's going to be okay for me. Positionally, probably I want to try and start thinking about restricting that knight, maybe getting a pawn b4 in, maybe a3 as well, and also maybe even playing h4 at some point. They might go knight there. These knights are very tricky, and definitely they give me a big headache whenever they start hopping around. Okay. I just want to get some piece coordination. And then maybe start playing a little bit to restrict the knight. So I think in the interest of time, I'm just going to try and create a little bit of breathing space for my rook. Okay. I am running devilishly low on time. This does not worry me too much, as I think I'm going to be able to pick up this pawn here. If they take the pawn on a2, I will be getting kind of a skewer. Okay, so play is getting a little bit crazy here. And probably my commentary is going to start just dropping a little bit. Yep, and that's what happens. Make sure I'm probably going to fall into something silly. It's just a blitz fest right now, not skills or anything at all. Yeah, exactly. These are kind of frustrating things, but it happens. And yeah, let's see. I might even be able to still play for some kind of a win. Yeah. So one thing that's instructive is to try and play a knight's move from the king whenever you can. Alright, so it was a draw. Probably not a fair result in my opinion, but I guess that's what happens when you get low on time. Anyways, let's go take a look at the game. Yeah, so as I said, this is all just theory from decades and decades ago. And I think, I mean, if you look at these games that I was mentioning between Alekhine and Capablanca, it was very drawish actually, so I don't think white is aspiring for too much in this type of play. And then I like white's idea of, I don't know if they knew it or not, but maybe sacrificing for the initiative and having the bishop pair. I think white has a lot of activity, I mean black has a lot of activity here, and I think there's definitely some good compensation. Let's keep going. I think probably that may be a misstep with bishop e7, as I think white's compensation comes in the form of the bishop pair, and they should try and start activating their pieces. Try and keep the bishop pair definitely, but maybe it wouldn't be possible to even keep the bishop pair. But I appreciate the idea of trying to pin the knight to the bishop, but because the knight comes with check, it wasn't quite working out. Yeah, so I think white played quite well. They never got their rook into the game. They focused, I think, too much a little bit on their bishop and knight piece play. And so maybe that could be like one place for improvement. At any rate, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please provide any feedback as always. Thanks. Have a good night.